Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits the Thriller podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good because I haven't been on a plane lately, nor have I been near a nuclear facility. So, all that being said, I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I mean, we haven't been on this feed for a little bit. We've had a little bit of hiatus from all three pods. I guess it's just been life. You had a baby. For those who only follow us on this feed, you had a baby, so welcome. We're expanding the No Limits world over here. But yeah, this is episode 60 of No Limits, the Thriller podcast. It's kind of perfect that we haven't done anything in the past because this is coming right after our interview with TJ Newman about this book.
Yeah,
And so now would have covered all of her books. Today we're covering Worst Case Scenario. Um, Interesting one. I think,
it's different. It's definitely different.
it's definitely different. And I thought, going into it, right? Obviously, she has this shtick in like planes, but the first two being focused on planes, whether like the first one's in the air and the second one's in the water.
Yeah,
But now, I kind of figured she would have to go somewhere else with it, and this was a complete shock to me. And come stemming from that interview, right? And she kind of, I think she says it in the author's note too, but the idea from this came from when she was talking to pilots and just asking them what their worst fear was. And, she had this, I guess, there's a conspiracy theorist out there in all of us. And this one pilot gave an answer. My worst fear is, crashing into a nuclear facility or having a plane crash into a nuclear facility. And she's like, what are you talking about? That's like crazy. First of all, there would be protections against that, the odds of that happening or not. And he's like, I love his answer. That's what they want you to think.
that's what they want you to think. Yeah.
Put on your tinfoil hat, my dude.
I don't know if it's that far fetched, my man, because we talked about this with Ward Larson too, another one of our airplane enthusiast, guests we've had on, also an author, great books there. But I asked him, I'm like, we live in DC, or I live in DC. You formerly lived in DC. He's like, those planes come right over the river, just within a very small radius of everything DC, the White House, the monuments, Congress. I can't believe he was like, there's not really that many protocols besides stay out of DC airspace, just stay on track.
Right.
But it's only a split second decision if something's going on to, steer clear of those sites. Planes coming into Reagan, DC National, are so close to all that. It blew my mind the first time I came down here. So whether it's that or a nuclear facility, sometimes I am just shocked seeing that, talking to insiders on the industry of how close things can come or how these close calls are so possible. And this one in the book, it doesn't even have to hit the reactor. Everyone is so relieved, including the president and in the Oval Office. At least the nuclear reactors are okay. Yeah, but how many other things can go wrong? It's the cooling pumps. It's the fuel tank where the pool with the fuel rods, spent fuel rods. Mm-hmm. Like the nuclear reactors are running just fine. That's not the problem. Yet we still might have a Category 8 major meltdown, which is unheard of. I thought that was, this is so close to home. Chernobyl, Fukushima were level 7s. I don't feel all that protected from something like that happening. Fukushima was just a tsunami and an earthquake, and we built infrastructure in the wrong spot. How are we supposed to know or predict that? How many other things have we built that are in the wrong spot? They're near a fault line. Some crazy weather event could happen. Some human activity, terrorist activity could happen. Or in this case, a random heart attack while the co-pilot's locked in the John, and gets knocked out. And the 400-pound snack cart, hits the cockpit door. And this thing is just pure chaos. It's out of the blue. And I don't know, man. I wouldn't call it conspiracy theories. I think some of this stuff I think sometimes we are remarkably lucky that things like this don't happen more often. Like remarkably lucky.
Well, I think you can make the same argument, kind of like what Kyle Mills was trying to argue in Total Power, in the sense that, like look at our electrical grid. it's not protected at all, and a
Right,
couple
right.
well targeted attacks at a couple of different facilities could blanket the entire United States, especially Texas, who,
Yeah.
up until I think recently,
Those deep
when
freezes.
when they had those deep freezes, because they were not connected, they were their own sort of thing, like that one malfunction. So I feel like, you know, especially with nuclear energy, I'm a big proponent of it. Um, may get some flack from our, but I'm very pro nuclear because one is very clean. I think this book is also like, talks about how clean it is, but
It,
I think with anything that, comes with a risk, we have to, we sort of live right on that knife's edge
right, right,
of,
right.
the good and then also the negative. And then it's up to, people, and unfortunately it's up to people like our congressmen to fund these things and to have proper, you know, places for, thinking about where nuclear storage is going to be, thinking about, the whole reason why they didn't have proper batteries is because this is being decommissioned over time. And, it's kind of like a warehouse that's being, transitioned out. Right. And
Hmm.
so they're not getting enough resources. They don't have enough people. Um,
And it's too
and
small.
so
They've said it's too small of a facility to build some of these extra safety features into.
exactly,
That's a
it's really,
political decision.
yes.
Like it's politics that put people in danger here.
And I think, what's really cool is this new nuclear that's coming out, um, funded by our people's favorite conspiracy theorist, Bill Gates, but it's to make these super small reactors, and that can just power like a single town. And like the idea would be to build a bunch of these.
Hmm.
And if you look at, people always point to Chernobyl or Fukushima in this book. It's referenced multiple times. I feel like, Chernobyl is the case of Russian ineptitude.
It's probably human error. Exactly, exactly,
you
exactly.
know,
Yeah,
um, again, not having the right resources,
yeah.
not,
The right
and
incentives for the people who work there, I'm sure, to be good at their job or put their best effort forward. Yeah,
and then Fukushima, like, I mean, I could have told you, like, building a nuclear reactor on
sure.
a on a island that could get tsunamis. That's probably not the best idea, but I guess you take those risks in order to, pave the way for
Yeah.
technology future. So
Can I ask though, and maybe it's not the podcast to debate clean energy sources, but you say nuclear is clean, and you're the scientist here, but what about this argument of the spent fuel rods? Like there is always a byproduct, a leftover material, and in this case,
mhm.
it's one with a half life of millions upon millions of years. So there's zero getting rid of it. And if you combine that with the exponential growth of the population and exponential need of energy sources, if we go to nuclear, is it truly clean with this much waste that honestly, as of now, we can't move off the planet? So that means underneath mountains, in these pools, which require cooling and pumps and systems that can be faulty. Bottom of the ocean, that's probably not a good idea. We can't launch these things into space, as of now, efficiently. So is nuclear truly clean with all the byproducts? Like the pools are pretty scary here. That these things are just lying in these either these concrete, stands, these silos, or these pools. All of those can break down, and we're going to run out of space. Are we not?
Well, I think, you know, I'm definitely not the person to, fully. I've read a decent amount on it, but, I'm just a biologist. I think if we want to go into down that route, we should invite someone on who's a nuclear specialist. But I
Yeah.
think, like, what I was trying to say is that, with anything that we do, whether it's, coal, whether it's, some of these other things, there's a positives and negatives, right? And
Right.
so,
Right.
um, until we get nuclear fission, which they proved so
Yeah.
far in that small town in England, which is apparently, like, there's no waste at all. So, anyways, but
Yeah. This is probably the most efficient option we have right now to create the needs that or meet the demand, I should say.
mhm, mhm.
But I just wonder long term what you do with these spent fuel rods, man.
Yeah, no, it's a definite question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I that's funny because I think bringing up the nuclear fuel rods kind of can allow us to jump into some of the characters. And I think
Yes,
the
yes,
character of Joss, that
yes,
was her like thesis. That was why she went
yes.
to Washington. I didn't sort of put together that she was like this older lady. I mean, I guess I should have could guess that, but I don't know. Really like this character, very
Sure.
sassy. And the other thing, and it's even brought up in this little quote that I pulled from Amazon, which I'm guessing is on the back of the cover. But like in this heart-stopping thriller, ordinary people, power plant employees, firefighter, teachers, families, neighbors, friends, are thrust into an extraordinary situation as they face the ultimate test of their lives. It will take the combined courage, ingenuity, and determination of brave few to save not only their community, but the fate of the humanity at large.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that's what like TJ Newman really gets well,
Yes.
not only in falling and drowning, but here she's really good at just bringing these ordinary people. It's not, we don't really even, yeah, we talk to the president, but it's not like we're not talking to the director of nuclear
Yeah.
energy. We're not talking to, or the director of the Department of Energy. There's no Mitch Rapp that's going to come in and save.
Right.
It's literally, the lead engineer at a power plant,
Yep.
the head firefighter at the power plant, and, the local
Yep.
NREL person who are there to save the day. And then, not only you talk about this other wider community in this small town in
The small
Minnesota,
town. Right.
like I think of the uh
The CB
like the
radio.
ex-worker, the CB like the
Yep.
ex-worker who knew to go to where to
Yep.
go to get the CB
Yep.
radio to get the information out to the
Yep.
people. It's the church community.
Even
It's
the town jackass, who won't go scuba diving, he gives them the gear in the end.
right, and he's
Like
the
even
one who
that curmudgeon,
goes
and then
and
he goes to
saves.
with the truck. He brings the truck to the bridge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like, there's no, like I said, there's no Mitch Rapp, there's no Tom Cruise,
Yeah.
there's no superhero that's going
That's
to come
right.
in and save the day. It's truly the works of these ordinary people, including
Yep.
Joss, that really really give vibrancy to the story.
You're right. And that I'm picking up is the TJ Newman hallmark. Ordinary
Mhm.
people in extraordinary circumstances doing whatever it takes for each other and for survival, and thinking outside the box and being creative and challenging power structures, and basically taking their fate into their own hands in the ultimate of circumstances. And what you get to do here that's different is it was more just like these random people on the plane in the last two books had to do that.
Work
So it was
together.
almost
Yeah,
a little more like happenstance
forced.
that it
Hmm.
was forced, right? This person had the skill and this person had this skill. Well, here it's like these people in your communities. Like that small town has the firefighter, like you said, the school teacher, the people whose auntie or uncle or grandma or whatever, had some connection, and everybody can pitch in. And that also, it's different because they're pitching in from their ordinary lives. Like you get to see them on the truck, or one of them racing through the streets, driving to the site, or people showing up after you put out the CB radio call. Where when they're on the plane contained, you can't have people snap into action in their community, in their home. And it's kind of cool to have all these different locations this time. We're not just inside the belly of the plane. Although it distracted a little bit for me, I was trying to keep track of some of the geography when we're going from the school
Hmm.
and then we hear the school buses going this route, and then they have to turn around and they get on these tractors and go through the fields. I'm like, wait a minute, but then, so I know they drove back to the facility, and they're like, and she's like, just trust me, like we have to go here, and they find the bunker, but I couldn't keep straight of like, there's this bunker that nobody knew about at the site, and the school teacher is there with the kids, and she just took Matt, Steve's kid, from school with her, and Steve's the firefighter. Like keeping some of these connections together, and then there was Bree, who was Danny's girl. Danny's the other firefighter. So there's like the local firefighters out at the bridge saving Connor, the boy, but then there's the firefighter crew at the site trained for the nuclear facility. And just did the geography check out of who was where and when? And then eventually they go to see RJ, the guy who gives them the scuba gear, and I think the teacher and Joss go to talk to him. Would they
Yeah, they do.
really?
Yeah.
But we were under the gun, so would they really have time to drive to whoever's house this is, have this little chit chat, then drive back, and then another time Joss is walking through a field, and it's kind of cool, like she's putting X's on the debris if they're radioactive, but just something about the timing of she's walking through this field randomly, marking things with spray cans when she's the one in charge of this response.
Well, I
And
think
then
so.
she had a relationship with Ethan, like who was also the point guy on the emergency response. It's just like these connections I couldn't keep straight in my mind of who knew who was dating who used to be dating who has kids with who. I think it came together in the end. But outside of Steve and his son Matt, like they were the only family connection I really only truly deeply cared about. Everyone else's connection to one another just seemed forced to make this small town feel. I got lost in
Yeah,
that a little.
I guess that's it's typical of this type of thriller. Where like perfect case, right? Matt is the kid who is Steve's son, who he's the one who gets picked up to go to the bunker. Like, even though you know, and then you get these introspection with Steve, like, oh, I know he's safe. He's with he's with the teachers, but in
Right.
actuality, like a teacher
Brought him back there. Yeah. Yeah.
brought him back to the
A
site.
little irony there
And,
for sure.
and of course, it's Danny or Danny's daughter who is the one, also goes to the site, and she's the one who gets caught up at the site to try to save the kid.
Right.
Um,
So she's with the
and
teacher, but that's Danny's daughter,
yes, yeah, yeah,
right? Anyway, some of that I just couldn't keep straight for a little while. I'm
yeah.
sure
And
it
then
checks out. I'm sure
you're
it checks.
right in the sense that obviously we're supposed to pick up on this tension between Joss and Ethan, and in the fact that, and then we even get the story that they were, high school,
Right.
and then obviously she wanted to
She left for DC.
get out of the small town.
Yeah.
He didn't. They broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
But I feel like there's a lot. Everyone has to connect, and maybe that's a little bit that is very accurate to a small town.
That's true too.
Like,
that is true.
I live in a small town here, out in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and it's shocking to me when I go to these soccer games and I start talking to people, and they're like, "Oh, wait, that's your aunt," and then she is like best friends with my mother-in-law, and then
3 degrees of
baby,
separation. Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm like, everyone is just related to everyone in Glenside. So,
And this is a fictional town, right? What was it? Wakita?
Waketa. Yeah.
Waketa. That it's fictional? I
think
kind of
so.
I think so
I
too.
never heard of it.
It's probably very realistic in that, there is this nuclear facility somewhere on the Great Lakes, but is it exactly here in this town, That's probably up for grabs.
Yeah, because this is Waseca. Yeah, no, I think it's a fictional town. But I do think also you listen to the audiobook, right? And so I think I want to get into the narrator here, because we get a surprise, we get a new narrator. I'm guessing that's because she's left Simon & Schuster and gone to Little Brown Books.
A new publisher, yeah.
New publisher, different recording studio. I loved him. I thought
this guy
was great.
Good. Yeah, he was good.
He's a famous actor. Like, I've seen him he's like that guy, in things.
Like an actual in-person actor, like only narrator. Okay.
I've seen him in a bunch of movies, TV shows.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's how, he was reading her story, but the way she breaks up in chapter, and I'm assuming, like, I don't have a physical copy of the book, but I'm assuming, like, when something ends and then another paragraph begins, like,
you could see that jump on page,
a little break.
Yeah.
But when he was reading it, he would like finish one paragraph that was related to one story, and then immediately we would jump to the next.
Yeah.
And that took a little bit of getting used to. And I feel like that wasn't the case in the past two novels, but
I don't think so.
Probably because we weren't jumping around as much, right? Like,
right.
We had a lot of jumping around.
Yeah, like, it almost could have gotten annoying, but I wish they said the location every time they did that jump, just so there was that audible clue of, I'm stopping one story, and like you said, on page it would skip a line or skip a few lines or maybe even a dashed line. the audio narration just went from one story immediately into the next as if you continued reading paragraph after paragraph. And I think that's why it caused my confusion on the geography of who's where and who knows each other and how are they connected. I think something got lost in the shuffle with that part of the audiobook. No doubt on page, I'm sure it would work out and it would check.
Yeah, because you picked up one of like the most confusing things to me when they're like, "Oh, we need a diver," and Josh says like, "Oh, I know a guy," and then immediately we jump to she's driving in like the car driving with the other teacher, right?
Yeah.
And they're having this conversation, and I was like,
How
"Wait,
did
what
they pick
happened?"
her
Like,
up?
yeah,
Yeah.
like, and I guess
And
if
why
I
did
was
she
reading
go?
that, yeah, I was wondering that the whole time. But anyways, because it's not like she had any connection to RJ. Like Josh was the one. Josh was the one who had
The
connections
connection.
to RJ.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that probably was like the hardest thing with this novel. And
Yeah.
like I wonder if we go back and look for that in Drowning or Falling, like does she when she switches locations, is it between chapters? Like, because that's much easier. Like, you end a chapter and then you say
Right.
chapter like 1 and then you start something out, right?
That would make
Um,
sense. I just maybe we didn't pick up on it because, like you said, there were so few locations. Where here, you do have the bridge with Danny and that fire team. You've got the bunker. You've got the school. You've got the control room with Ethan. Eventually, you have the pool, and then eventually you have the pump station in that
right.
building. So I do think there were some growing pains there of TJ's writing style, or maybe it's just the narrator. It could have worked out in the print book, which I didn't read, but maybe there are growing pains of trying that as something new and having to sort out these jumps from one to the other for the reader because I got
Mm,
lost. I liked it in the end. I will say this. It resolved in the end when everything is coming to a high point, like that climax. And the Danny story, I'd say the climax is when she gets on the swing or on the rope and she's swinging in to save the kid and the car falls into the water and then they have to scuba them out. Also, I would say two kind of high points or pinnacles of the action at the facility. One is patching the pool when Steve has to go into the pool. And
yeah.
then the second one is when they find out they have to go manually, clear the pumps or start the pumps
Yeah. Mm,
and drain the water out from the pump station. So I think those high points kind of brought it all together. And it was like, I know where we are, I know what's happening, and I know who's involved. And everything resolves in the end, especially, what a great scene at the White House with the president. We'll have to talk
oh,
about President Dawson.
dude.
So it all comes together, and I love these characters in the end. But because of all this, through the first half, almost even maybe 2/3 of the book, where I was a little questioning who's who and where's where, it made me not connect with the characters as deeply. Like, it
Mm,
took the fishing pole chat for me to truly get Steve and his son and the sacrifice he's making and what they've been going through since Claire, the wife, died, and he's basically not had any guidance in his life, this little boy. And it took me until Joss and Ethan had to kind of come together, and he's knocking on the door saying,
yeah.
no, no, no. And she took his badge so he couldn't stop her. And she sacrifices herself to go with Steve to get down to the pumps. Until those like pinnacle moments and the high point of the action was really happening, I don't think I connected with the characters. But then when shit
Interesting.
hit the fan, I absolutely connected with them.
Yeah. And obviously, it's like a typical story where, you think like halfway through, right? When they solve the problem with the pool and Steve essentially sacrifices most of his life, because he has anywhere from a year to months or, could be weeks. You think, oh, it's fine. And then that's when she goes out to start assessing more of the damage and then finds that, wait, why is there radioactive water coming into this airplane? And, we get the whole second part of it, right? But you knew the whole time, right? Because you're starting chapters by saying countdown to
The
0 hour.
countdown,
And
the
so
0 hour, yeah.
like, that was very effective. You knew that something else was coming,
Something else.
right?
It was almost like whack-a-mole, though. Even with the
Yeah.
bridge scene and the car, it was like, okay, she's just going to save the boy. That can't happen. So the car had to fall. And then when the car had to
Yeah.
fall, they just don't die. How are we going to save them? And then they get the pocket of air. The air's running out. And then they have to come down with the scuba gear. And then the glass won't break because of pressure. And so he comes back with the gun and he shoots the glass. And then they got to get the boy out. But while they get the boy out, she's still dying. And then she might be dying. And then they get her out. And then the helicopter's leaving. And the helicopter leaves. And then she has to get on the helicopter, and the other guy, the colleague and the friend, has to beg them to take her on the helicopter, and then they're on the helicopter Do they go to the pediatric hospital 8 minutes away, or do they go to the one 4 minutes away with a better chance to save her? It was almost whack-a-mole, which while I'm reading it is very suspenseful, right? But looking back, I'm just like, there were too many things going on. It was just one thing
Yeah.
after, like, it was too much. I'm spent. I'm spent.
No, there was like a little too much of that.
Yeah.
And like, it was even pretty jarring when you realize like the one firefighter friend, um, like I imagine him like falling down on a wall. He looks up and sees, you get that he chose to go to the
Yep.
pediatric and not,
Yep.
potentially give her a
Yep.
better chance. I think like the thing that probably irked me the most was when we're going down, and obviously these two people have decided to sacrifice their lives. She pulls one more like potential. Oh wait, maybe Joss could be saved by
That's right.
the panel actually is not wet,
Yeah.
and Steve could go and flip the panel. But at the very end, he ends up like splashing water out of it and doesn't work. And like to me, that took me a little bit out of it because they had both decided to sacrifice. Like you could have just had them walk down together, do the thing, and go. Like I didn't think like that was probably the worst part. You didn't need one more of those, but
It was
then
one too
and
many.
then yeah.
When you're reading it, you're edge of your seat, though. Let's be
Oh yeah,
honest.
for sure. No, I mean like this is
She's
us
crushing it.
Monday morning
Yeah,
quarterbacking,
completely.
given
Completely.
our thing. But this is like name your favorite thriller movie, and this is like that on crack. Like I think of like Speed
Yeah.
2,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you know,
You walk
like
out of it and thinking like
any of the
that
diehards,
was that was a hell of a ride, but it was actually a pretty unrealistic. I don't believe it could actually happen. Looking back, that was kind of ridiculous. But while you're in that seat watching that movie, you're just chomping down popcorn. Like,
yeah.
give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. But when it's over, you're like, what?
And to me, I even texted you when I'm reading the epilogue, listening to the
Yeah.
epilogue, like
Yeah.
that hit really hard. And I feel like that's, credit to TJ Newman for getting me to like, buy in. Like it doesn't, I will agree with you. It doesn't hit as hard as Drowning because because we were with those characters a lot more, like,
Right.
because I feel like here we have more characters. And
There's almost
there's
less
three of
going
them.
on in Drowning, which gives you time to connect with the characters. Where this was so fast and jumpy, I didn't have time to connect with the characters until very late in the book.
But I will say that this is, that whole and then has been in all three of her novels. Like,
It has
there
been.
was so many things in Drowning that I was like, he's like, oh, we have to shut the door. Oh, we have to,
Yeah, it's
now we're
true.
going down, and then they have to put them on these suits that shoot them up, and then but that doesn't work, like
But that
so.
was contained to that one thing. So like when that keeps spiraling out of control or you have to problem solve, it's like Apollo 13, right? Like it's nonstop. You have to keep basically sciencing the shit out of the next thing to stay alive.
Or The Martian, yeah.
Or The Martian. I was able to buy it more because it was so singular. It was just that self-contained place. And like when something happened, we were already there. Instead of here, it's like squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. I'm jumping all over too many places. I'm gonna get off that kick though because you're right.
So what if we? I think what if we had gotten rid of? I think like if we had gotten rid of the
Saving Connor.
firefighter scene on
Yeah.
the bridge, essentially we would only be at the facility.
The facility.
Like, do you think that would have made it better, or did you? I like that story as
That's the
well.
problem. I like that story a lot, and I love Danny so much.
Mm.
And Connor and the boy in this car seat is just like I thought that was incredible writing. But overall, I'm gonna say yes. I think the plot would have been better just staying at the facility, like a Drowning, where we're just inside the fuselage of the plane. I think it would have been better, but I don't think I would have wanted it because we would have lost so much of amazing character writing that TJ gave us. And then similarly, I felt like this book, almost more so than like the nuclear control power plant management, whatever you would call that, like that room where they're kind of overseeing everything. I felt like her version here of flight attendants on a plane was actually the fire service and how they
Mm,
interacted with each other as colleagues, what they did in the heat of the moment, how they were professionals and could respond to so many different situations. And we got to see that not just with Steve and his crew, but also with Danny and her crew. So I think it's a strength of the book that we saw the fire service and their expertise and training and their heroic actions and the dynamics within that discipline. But plot wise, and that's also a shame because it was some of my favorite, most suspenseful action scenes. But something in my brain, it just removed me from the nuclear stuff, which was kind of a disservice. So I can go either way. I love that it's here. If it weren't there, I would probably love the other plot more.
mm, yeah, yeah.
But
Well, I guess that's why we talk these things out. But I think the sacrifice, and I think her the highlight of the Danny story, she even says it, is the president even says it at the end, like the willingness to not put the populace above the importance of the
the
individual,
individual,
and
yeah,
to essentially rebuke her superiors, not follow orders, and stay true to her, what she signed up for. Like, I'm here to save people, and if I have a chance to save someone, I'm going to do it.
yeah.
Because you could argue, like, yeah, they could have left, but they might not even been able to make it to the
They might
pyre.
not have even
Or
had an impact, right? That
right.
might have been done and dusted. And if you could have saved the kid, you should have. When you're just going to go and twiddle your thumbs because there's nothing to do with
Mm,
the reactor because it's too long gone. Yeah,
yeah.
and that's another thing about I do want to take back that you shouldn't cut this part. I never said you should cut it, but
No, you didn't.
that
You didn't. I just
I
asked.
didn't.
It was
But
hypothetical.
that was one of the more brilliant things when they had to decide to stay or to go. Man, you're absolutely right. It's like that question you're always asked of like, what's the moral answer if a train is about to fall off a cliff and there's one person, if you
It's the
jump off the
trolley. The
train, you
trolley
could save
scenario.
the trolley scenario, right? It's going to drop on a bunch of people, but you can, or do you save the one person? There's no right answer. The answer is whatever call you make in the moment with the information you have to do something to save whoever you is the
Mm,
right call. Like nobody else can judge it except for the person who's can make the decision in that moment. And this fire team
yeah.
made the right decision, I would say, to save the boy.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, getting back to that epilogue and the president kills
Oh,
it out of the park with
yeah.
his, going off script, um, and just I'm crying, like, because that Steve and Joss gave the ultimate sacrifice,
Yeah.
um, and then at the moment we don't know if Danny's alive or not, and then we get that final scene with the boy Connor putting the medal on her.
Yep.
Yeah, I just like
Amazing.
that was just icing on the cake to me. Like the final scene of the movie. It's perfect.
And then the cut to the fishing scene
Oh yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
Matt
Like that
fishing.
wasn't even the final scene. No,
I,
that was great
but
too.
between both of those, they hit so hard. As good as they hit, and as I would say, that's the moment where I truly, truly came to love these characters on such a deeper level. I like the drowning epilogue more, where they're kind of sitting around the campfire a year out, having
Mm,
this shared experience about how their lives have changed and how they view the world differently. I don't know. They're both really, really good. That's another TJ Newman hallmark is being able to
yeah,
look at the scenario in the future, see it as the past when in the moment you don't even know if there's going to be a future, and yet she's able to show you the characters, removed from the suspense of the situation, reflecting back on what it was like. And I mean, just look at this writing. This is the only quote I pulled out here. I'm sure there could have been many, but this one hit on another level. And it is about reflecting on time and the future and these gifts that we have. It comes right as Steve has to tell the boy that he's dying, that the accident happened in the pool. And he's reflecting and he says, quote, "The concept of time had changed for Steve. It was suddenly so aware of its passing, of its existence at all. He thought he understood after he ran out of it with Claire, but now he realized he didn't get it at all. If he truly had understood what time meant, that time runs out, he would have done it all so differently. Maybe you can't understand until you're the one standing on the brink. Maybe we're not meant to. Maybe it's some biological trick designed to keep us safe from saber-toothed tigers, only now it keeps us building big cities, worrying about deadlines. Maybe we're not supposed to get that it will all be gone. We all will be gone until it's too late to do anything about it. If life's a joke and death's the punchline, in any good setup, you'd never see it coming. Because if we did understand, we would spend it all in the sun with the grass between our toes. What else was the point? We're here, then we're not. And before that, and after, the mountains stay. The waves keep crashing. The storm comes and goes. And any of that for a brief fleeting moment, we remember we were here too. Damn.
Dude, that was an
Damn.
intense like part of the story, you know, like,
Woof.
and it kind of, I don't know, as a father of four myself, like it kind of got me thinking, you know, you truly don't know what you have until it's gone, right? Like, you know, and he even reckons that, oh, you know, he made all these promises, right? When he lost his wife, he's going to, you know, do connect more with his son. But until he truly realized that his time was running out, he realized he didn't do that. And then, but he finally made that ultimate connection. I think that knot tying scene, you know, in
Yes.
the world is coming to an end, but that was so important. And I feel like he needed to do that. So yeah, no, it's tearjerker, man. She's good at that.
Yeah, she's so good. He didn't just need to show him how to tie the knot. He needed to show him he can trust the world. He can trust
Sure.
people. Because the son even calls the dad and says, but you didn't follow through. Like even what his dad is like in this situation, the son even says, but you failed me. Like you weren't there. Like even after you I heard you promise this once before. And learning to tie the knot on the fishing pole is so much more than a sign of I'm going to teach you how to fish. It's I'm literally going to restore your faith in humanity, so you don't act like a dick at school, and you do trust the teachers, and you know whoever takes care of you after me, you actually realize that they care for you. I didn't teach you that in my time on Earth, and I'm going to teach it to you now. And yeah, it just that fishing is such a symbol of so much more. And to watch him at the end doing it on his own, Matt's going to be all right. Matt's going to
Yeah.
be all right because he had that moment, and he got to play hero too. And the president recognized that, like it was his idea to send his dad down to the pumps, and with the drone, he got to fly the drone. And again, that was his idea. I really so I just want to ask your favorite character because mine might be the boy. I don't know.
Mm.
If not his dad, it's one of those two. But
I,
then
I,
there's Danny. Then there's Joss. Like you can't. It's too hard to decide.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Mine was leaning a little towards Josh. I keep saying Josh. I can't say her name.
Joss.
Joss.
Yeah.
Um,
When she's dropping the iodine tablets and she's talking down the guards when she's trying to get in. I love those little quirks.
yeah, she reminded me, of this character that we've seen in a lot of movies. Like, recently in COVID, I watched Contagion. She reminded me of, what's her name? She was in
Still
Titanic.
haven't seen it.
Why you haven't seen Titanic?
Oh, Titanic. Yeah, still haven't seen Contagion. Oh, the main character, the girl. What's her
Yeah.
name?
What's her name? Kate
Jesus.
Winslet.
Kate
There we
Winslet.
go.
There we go. Yeah.
So in Contagion, Kate Winslet is like this CDC person who literally up until, she knows she's succumbing to the disease. Like she's working, trying to save people's lives up until the very end. Like, and that's just one example, but we've seen it in a lot of movies. And like, to me, that just, but Steve is the same way, right? He's, he knows that this is like a crazy ass thing. I'm doing it with, crappy scuba dive. Oh, so let's say TJ Newman loves like an underwater scuba skiing.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
she had a
We get a
whole,
couple here.
Underwater welding.
Yeah. Yep.
She loves. Maybe she knows a lot about underwater.
I think she
welding.
wanted to
just
keep
wants
that
us to work
alive
it in.
since all the research she had to do with drowning about underwater
Yeah.
welding and like getting deep into that world. It's like let me reuse some of that knowledge here.
There you go. Dude, that's a tough call. Favorite character.
Yeah.
So Connor's story is pretty intense too. Like seeing his mom. Oh, I wanted to get to that in terms of maybe this can jump us into the scorecard, but in terms of like
Danny
Yeah,
using the
the whole
Batman
with
reference.
Batman, yeah. But the
Danny
whole
is just also a great character. Man.
the for scoring action and suspense, I want to draw a point to the beginning, right after the crash, and we get all these cut scenes to
The
where
little
the debris
vignettes.
is going.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was good writing. That was
and
really good writing.
oh, very good writing. And I'm just imagining like seeing this. I'm this screams movie, and I hope
Yeah.
like her books get turned into movies. But
They should be. Yeah.
especially then when we cut to the accident that causes Connor's like family to
Yeah.
perish, like that
Yeah.
was just so intense. Or when we have it cracks and something exposed, and then that the one firefighter or the one worker, right, it gets direct irradiation from one of the cores, and
Yeah.
like he knows that he has like minutes. um or when there was like another thing where like they see this wing fly over them,
Right.
and that's the one that like ends up going to this
That was
other thing.
so
Like just those
cinematic.
little,
The way
yeah,
she wrote
those
that
little like
chapter, yeah,
perfect.
so cinematic. You can turn that into film just literally as it's written. It's like you're reading the screenplay, right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for action suspense, I gotta give this a high score. This is a solid 9 for me.
I think I gotta give it 9. Yeah, it's incredible. Just like the last few books. I mean, I don't think action or suspense has been any lower for any of TJ's books. Might have even
No,
been a perfect 10 for Drowning
it might have
if we
been.
pull that
Might have
out.
been.
But yeah, this is a 9, 9.5 possible. But yeah, I'll go 9. I'll go 9.
What about plot?
Plot, I'm gonna ding it just a little. I brought up my
Mm,
issues, the whack-a-mole, who's where, who's going where, timing. I think again we might have said that with the other books. Timing is a little suspect, and the other ones you could write that off of like you're trying to make a whole movie out of a very singular situation, which has a countdown and has a clock that we could run out of oxygen at any minute, or this, the in the first book in Falling, they actually had to extend time too long because we were like, how is this pilot in the cockpit and this plane going so long because it has to get to New York, which is where they're going to ultimately crash. It was almost like, would this really be this drawn out without some intervention or something happening? So timing again is a little off. I think for plot it leaves me at an 7.5.
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
All of our little things, I got it. Um, I really think the pacing and just the ands, like there was just too many ands, and I think like because we had 3 storylines, each one of those had their own ands, even though some interconnected. I think little cleaning up there
So
would do better.
buy-in, all this, some of it took me out on buy-in, but the suspense was so good it keeps you on the edge of your seat. So buy-in in terms of turning the page is off the charts. That would be a 5 out of 5. My buy-in score is going to suffer a little bit because I actually wanted to know more about nuclear, like
Hmm.
how the plant works, how the plant operates. We got touches of it, but you could tell she wasn't as confident writing that as she would be with the flight stuff from a flight attendant perspective. It's like we got a good amount of it, but I feel like I needed a little bit more explanation of radiation and radiation poisoning. We got good glimpses of it, but I suspect so many more people would have gotten radiation poisoning who were on this thing, and like why some did, why some didn't, and how the tech works. We got touches of it, but for me, I was wanting a little bit more of the insider's view of one of these plants. So I think I would settle on a 3.5 buy-in.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess like, am I rude to say like, what are the odds of? Am I bought into the idea that this could actually happen? I mean, I guess it could, right? I
Yeah.
guess we kind of made the case in the beginning. A freak accident can happen, and then we're just showing you what can take place. So 3.5. I think I'll go 4. I'll go 4.
Yeah. Another thing on could this really happen? I am glad that again the enemy was just basic science and physics. It wasn't a coordinated attack. and how the president had to reassure the nation of that.
Mm,
And the president deliberately said, like, we recovered the data recorder. This is a one-off. Flights can go back. I thought a lot of that was realistic in that we didn't need to force a terrorist scenario like we did in Falling that
sure.
maybe is suspect again. We kind of just had the enemy being happenstance, and I liked that part again. And the president has to respond to that to understand what to do for the nation. The individuals have to respond to that. I kind of like when we're up against the gun and we don't have to necessarily deal with a terrorist or a villain's motivations, which is going to make it hard for bad guys here. Can we just get out of the way? If good guys are a 5, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Good guys are a solid 5.
good guys are a solid 5. What's the villain? Is it physics again? Like science? Like
Uh, Radiation. Like, I guess what what is interesting, right? Because in Drowning, we at least had like
the one guy.
the
Yeah,
asshole character who kind of served as a little bit of comic relief. You know,
right.
ideally in those kind of situations, when you put random people, odds are you're probably going to have at least one that are like that. You know, that are very selfish. You know, in this case, we're showing a community that, I guess, RJ to an extent, but in the end, he ended up leaving his house and trying to help because he heard on the radio they needed a tow truck driver. So I wouldn't even. You knew that he wanted to dive. He's probably
He had to
really
make a
drunk.
point. He was making a
And
point.
he at least gave him the scuba
The
gear.
gear.
So
Or maybe he did come back because of Joss's talking down when she was like, "You missed your chance. You, you've been in the shadows your whole life. You think the deck's stacked against you. You were never going to get recognized. You know, everyone above you was getting the credit, not you." And goes, "You had your chance. You were asked to do something. You were asked to make a difference. You had the authority to do it, and you pussied out." I feel like maybe he responded to that to then show up with the truck.
yeah,
Joss
yeah.
can, talk you down.
There are no bad guys, so I don't really
No
know.
bad guys.
I don't really know what to do with the score. Maybe we
That's
just did
tough.
take it out of 45.
Because the good guys are so good, does it deserve a free 5 points? I mean, or the bad
Good.
guy being time and suspense, just being up against the
Time.
elements in the clock. Oh, okay. Here are the bad guys: the hole in the pool, the pump, filling up with water, the electrical short circuiting, the backup redundancy power system's not working, or the car falling off the bridge. In terms of those elements being bad guys, did they all work for you? Like, were all those things believable that those problems would have been caused? I think so.
Yeah, I think she nailed every which way that this story could go. You know, obviously there's even like the crash scene. Like it's a crazy. You know, the bridge is probably going to collapse.
Yeah.
If you had someone in there, like, and they could go into the Mississippi, it's drowning. Like, yeah. So I don't know. I would don't mind giving it a 5.
Let's give it that 5. That makes up for me a little bit on plot and buy-in, where I kind of had the same issues that reoccurred. So that makes up for it.
Listen, this is our scorecard. We came up with it. It's not perfect. You know, it's designed for political thrillers. But we like to branch out every now and then.
It's
So
kind of cool
screw
having
it.
a book without a real villain. So I
It's
like
our
that again.
podcast. Oh yeah. I think I would like this story a lot less if it was, some terrorist attack,
And there were like 10 other planes in the air that we stopped
Sure.
because U.S. Marshals found out about it and whatever, or we shot down 5 of them. We, whatever, force landed 2 of them. And it's like everything else is under control. Let's get back to fixing, this plant. I didn't need that. Didn't need a wider attack. Setting.
All right.
What do you
Setting.
think? What do you think on setting? Couple
What
ways
do you
I
think of
can go here.
the town of Waketa?
I think that deserves really high scores.
Mm.
The problem is I love the town. I love the town feel. I love the people and how they feel about their town. But I was just lost on who's driving where and which way things are going. And the bus turned around and they go to the bunker. And where's the bunker? What part of the plant is it at that nobody else knows about it? And then the kid gets caught with the drone. It must be really close then, right? Like really close to all the action and the control
Yeah, well, it's
center.
a population of 900, so it's a
I
small
just,
town.
you know what I needed? You know what I needed? And If the print version had this, I'm going out and buying one right now. I'm going to leave middle of the night. My son's sleeping back there. I'm going to go buy a copy. If it had a map,
That'd be
do you
cool.
think this book had a map?
That'd be cool if you had a map of Quetta, or like you should ask TJ to like make a map of Quetta and put it
Dude,
onto social media.
that would be next level. Maybe the book has it. I don't have a hard copy, but if it doesn't, that would be so cool. The town, but also even the facility, like an insert
Mm,
map just of this facility. Man, if you had a map in the beginning of this book, that would be fantastic. Like some of my favorite thrillers are the ones that have the map of where the
right,
action's taking place.
right.
Love that.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on it a little bit. I was a little bit confused sometimes in terms of like where we were in the nuclear power plant and where the damage was. Like you said, she's walking outside and like it was kind of hard to like grasp that setting of it. And like that's really important. I felt like the small town she got really well, like,
Agreed.
describing the church and
Yep. Even the
going to
school
RJ's
in the
house and
beginning.
the school and like all that stuff. But the actual plant, yeah, she, was explaining this where like there's a bunker or there's the cooling towers and then there has a basement and a sub basement. I don't know. Like there was a little bit more that could have been done with the power plant that is sort of like hesitating me to giving this a 5.
I feel like I was immersed as if I could feel, touch, smell everything except for the power plant.
Yeah.
Like the Danny rescue with Connor, it, everything was fire in there,
Yeah.
setting wise.
Because I didn't really understand like where the control room was.
Correct, exactly. That's why I
Maybe
needed
that's
that
on
map.
me. Yeah.
Maybe that's on me too. And then how far it is to get to that pump that they have to go get to at the end, or how far away the pool is that he's going to go diving in. And at one point, I think they were trying to bring in the batteries, and it was getting stuck, like either in the mud or something.
No, there was like too much debris that they couldn't drive the
That so
batteries.
much
Yeah.
debris they couldn't drive the batteries in. I'm like, just to see visually where and know the distances of these things, I think would have helped a ton for me. So anyway, all the other settings I loved. The plant could have been a little better. So I think I'm going to go with a 4. And a big part of that 4 is how well the Danny Connor rescue with the car on the bridge was. Like that was just written so well.
Yeah. Same for me.
4.
Or for me.
We're pretty similar through here
Yeah.
almost.
Only half a point difference so far.
Well, the cover. Let's see if anything's going to change here. I remember we both liked the covers. We liked that the covers had a running theme, a running a voice to them. What do you think about this one and how it compares to the other ones, but also is it good enough on its own?
I think this is my least favorite of the 3 covers.
I'm going to agree.
I don't know why. I like the fact that we have like the broken tail and the broken plane, the broken wing, which like that's like what's saving it because like
Correct.
obviously those are the 2 things that cause us the biggest problems, right? The tail is what goes into the power plant to cause like the water, which we have to solve at the very end, and then obviously the wing is what's involved with Connor and Danny in that
The car
storyline.
crash.
So
Yeah.
you know those kind of things are saving it, but maybe it's just like the color. Like
Mm.
I'm going back to falling, and drowning. Like I just like because the falling and drowning had this like idea, the way she did the letters, right? Where
Yes.
it was down for drowning and sort of going up for falling, right? So you have the sensation. I don't know, and I just don't like the coloring. I don't like the that it's like this cartoony
I was going to say it's so cartoonish.
faded like
Yeah.
fadiness to it. I almost wish it was a little bit more realistic, if that makes sense.
It's so cartoonish. And also the spotlight. I don't know what's going on with that spotlight, with like the shadows. I agree. The plane breaking up into pieces, particularly the distinct pieces which are going to drive the plot, is my favorite thing about the cover.
Yes.
But the coloring, the spotlight, like I wanted something nuclear. Like we are clearly doing something different than the last two books. We are not staying on the plane. The problem isn't basically going to be solved by the plane people. So I thought you had room to bring another element into the cover, a nuclear power plant, even just the smoke from a reactor or something. I thought you can hint at nuclear on the cover for sure, and that will show that this is a little different than the first two books. Instead, they just tried to stretch out the same exact cover, but make it cartoonish and just put vibrant colors to kind of make you think explosion. Yet those colors just come off as cartoony. So
Yeah, this almost reminds me of like a plane simulation, like video
yeah,
game,
yeah, yeah.
like that you would play on like your iPhone. You ever done like one of those, like you try to like land or fly a plane like that? It really reminds me of that, as opposed to the falling and drowning ones look like pictures of actual airplanes.
Yeah,
So,
right, right. And they bring in the text actually contributing to
hmm hmm
the storyline. The text here isn't really giving me anything nuclear.
yeah. How do you feel about? We don't really judge the title, but how do you feel about worst case scenario?
I do like the. I will say I like
Yeah,
the
I
title,
like the title. Yeah.
especially because I forget which one comes up first. They both come up worst case scenario and best case scenario. They're both like used during the story, and I think best case scenario might be actually stated or said first by the characters, which I thought was a kind of cool little subversion of expectations. Um, I think it's a great I think it's a great title, even though the other titles were one word.
Hmm.
I kind of expected this to be one word, but I like the longer title because it's a different book and it makes complete sense. This is the worst case scenario. If we have a category 8 nuclear disaster, it's
Yeah.
never been seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
An extinction event, as they inform the president. Like
Yeah.
worst case scenario
It
describes that
literally,
perfectly.
literally is the worst
Yeah,
case scenario.
I think this is one of the situations where that title gives me half a point back. So
Okay.
the cover, I'd say is a 2.5, two, two.
Is it too?
I can't give points for a title. I got to give a 2 to the cover. Yeah, we haven't given points for the title in any other series, so I'm not going to do it here. It's a 2.
Yeah, man. It's just I'm not vibing with the cover. I would go
Yeah,
lower if it didn't have the wing and the tail being like the destruction points.
it would be a 1 if they didn't specifically show, the tail and the wing. Sure. Free Space. Give me something you loved. We were a little negative, a little more negative than I thought because this book is really good. So hit me with your Free Space.
Well, I think we're just coming off like our most negative thing, which is the cover, which is an important part of at least for this pod, important part of the story. Um, for me, it might be a cop out, but it's just gotta be the everyday people that are thrust in these situations. I think it's like this is what TJ wants to do, and I love it. I'm here for it, and I'm excited to see where she goes next with it. Like, are we going to keep having like? Do you think we're going to have a plane in her next novel? Is she only going to do plane stuff like aviation thrillers? I'm
There's got to be
super
a plane.
intrigued.
There's got to be a
Yeah,
plane, but maybe it's not the main focus anymore.
yeah. We clearly, the plane scene was a chapter,
Yeah.
but it was the cause of like all of our struggles. So
She also continued. I know you pointed out when we did Falling and Drowning, this opening scene is everything's going wrong in the cockpit and,
yes,
and on the plane. And in one, it was a dream. And then the other, it was real life. And here we're back to not only real life, but the story's over once it like the story for the plane people is over once it happens.
right. You get like
It's
there
a
is no
different
coming
take.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah, different
it's a
take
different take on the same thing.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm
Like they're
intrigued
not
to
going to be our
see.
characters. None
Yeah,
of the people on the
no,
plane.
exactly. Yeah. So for me,
So I feel like she.
it's the ordinary people. It's the people in the
Correct.
church.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
RJ.
Yeah. 100%. I wish I could just repeat that. I think I'll say something about monologues. There's the president's speech. The pastor says something at one point. Steve, that reflection I read before, and ultimately his last words to his son. I feel like TJ can time out perfectly when we need, that wisdom bomb, that drop
Mm.
of wisdom with the gravitas. A character who has this force of nature and is just a larger than life character who is often an everyday person. And they're not only doing larger than life things, but at the right moment, they're putting words to it. They're saying out loud what everyone needs to hear, right when they need to hear it. And I think it's a subtle move, but it's something TJ's done so well. And I feel like she did that with, maybe it was Ruth and Ira, that old couple in Drowning.
Right, right.
Or maybe it was in the first book with like the wife, when she had to be there for her kids who were witnessing the kidnapping and all that. And she needed them to stay strong. Or even the kids themselves. In Falling,
Right.
I remember the little boy is like a hero when he wants to step up and put himself in his place for his mom and his sister, and hear what Matt has to do and the growth he has to go on. She has this uncanny ability to put words in the mouths of characters right when they need it, and right when we, the audience, needs it, to prove to us these people are among us, these people are our neighbors, these people are real, they can help us, we can help each other. Words matter. The things we say to people at the right moment can make a difference in not only their attitude, but their whole life's journey. And we can have that power on people with how we treat one another. And so these kind of conversations, and they are often these monologues of one person dropping wisdom, I think is just phenomenal. And it's a subtle thing I wouldn't have seen earlier, but I saw it in this book, and I think it's an amazing piece of her writing.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this. Unlike Drowning, we had people that all made sense
To be where they are.
to be where
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my big negatives for that book, in the sense that, of course, he's an engineer, and of course his wife is an underwater diver,
Underwater welding company.
underwater welding.
She owns. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it makes sense that they're in Hawaii. There would be those kind of things.
Fair.
But here, there's truly not a person that doesn't make sense that's there. Right.
They're firefighters on the job. It's a school
Yeah.
teacher at work. It's just
it's the plant operator,
plant
and
manager.
then
Yeah.
I guess the biggest one is the Joss character. But of course, anywhere there's a nuclear power plant, there's going to be a representative from the regulatory body.
Exactly.
She probably oversees, because there's multiple. They even mention like another, like Cloverfield or whatever. So I'm sure she probably has to go to all of them around.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, I agree with that. That was much less forced than the other books, where that just popped up and it's like, oh, well, we're lucky that person is here with that specific niche skill set. Here's just everybody doing their daily jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that gives us a 41.5 for me and a 41 for you. A little lower. Definitely the lowest. What do we give Falling?
So Falling, we were a little lower, 39 and 39.5.
Okay. So this is,
I think a big part of that was the villain.
I think part of that was the second, clearly second for me. I think our scorecards track which ones I liked.
I think the scorecard here, I think, absolutely nails it. Drowning is, what did I give it, a 46 even? 45? 40. I gave it a 46. You gave it a 45. That book is just the next level for me. And this one is below it, not significantly, but clearly below it. And then Falling is just a shade less than this one for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
Our patrons, we had a couple of patrons agree worst case scenario is their favorite.
Oh,
they think it's the best one. Yeah.
I can see that.
I could see it. I could certainly see it. Yeah. Drowning resonated with me. I still don't know why, but it really did. Yeah, still my favorite. But this one was very good. I'm glad this one is over a 40 on the scorecard. I'll put it that way. It definitely deserves over.
It deserves over 40. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right. What are we covering next time on this feed, Mike?
Well, we got to set our reading list with the baby and everything. We were a little hesitant to kind of put on paper what our reading list will be. But at least for the next one, we are going back to The Gray Man.
The Gray Man.
On Target, book number 2. And we should have that coming out to you sometime in November.
when I think of The Gray Man, I think of like everything that happens in a TJ Newman novel, but it's just like one guy.
Yeah.
like, and then.
It's true. That's true. That's kind of
So,
happening in this one too. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, gonna be going back to the Gray Man. Um,
Brad Thor after that.
Definitely go hit up our Brad Thor pod. We just
Yep.
concluded our final pod with giving our rankings on Capture or Kill on the
The
No
Mitch Rapp
Limits
podcast.
Mitch Rapp pod. So, we're firing. We're
Yep.
not firing on all cylinders right now, but we're getting back to that. And yeah, we only have like 5 books left in the Scott Harvath.
For Brad Thor, I think we ripped through the Brad Thor books. I think that will probably take us into the new year. Try
Yeah.
to get that done, and before we're back on this feed with, who knows, it could be more Gray Man. I'm down to read the next Gabriel Alon book as well,
Yeah.
or Targeted Beirut. We can get back
I
to
really
Jack
want to read
Carr,
that. Yeah.
so we can do a little nonfiction with Jack Carr. How about that? Will be our plan sometime around the holidays and the new year, is to get Targeted Beirut here on the Thriller podcast.
I guess while we're on the subject, Jack Carr, is that next year's novel is going
Tom
to be
Reese.
a Tom Reese story? Is that
Dude,
the only one we're getting? It's just a Tom Reese story?
it's a Tom Reese Vietnam Mac V. Sog book. That was
I'm
a
so
huge
excited.
announcement. Why don't we
We've
do
been
an episode
asking
on
for
that? Yeah.
We've been asking for that kind of story. Maybe not necessarily Jack Carr to do it, but
Any
we
series.
we've been pining to have it in.
Sure.
I guess we kind of got it a little bit with Capture or Kill in terms of like going backwards.
We wanted
But
more.
this is exactly what I wanted, and I like the fact. I think we even said it. I want to go back and listen to our
We called it.
Rising
we said
Sun, right? Or
No,
Red
because
Sky Morning.
Red Sky Morning, he left us in a place where we don't necessarily need a James Reese book right away. Where James Reese left off is like a perfect kind of pause point.
Pause break, yeah.
And I know we talked about, even if we didn't say it in the recording, we talked about this is a time to do a Tom Reese thriller.
Yeah,
We did talk about that. Yeah.
Maybe he was listening to us.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I mean, it's right. It's right
that.
for the taking. It's right for the taking, dude.
It's what's up next, and it's what the people want. Give them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
It's only what we want, though, thanks to, was it Only the Dead, the book where we got a lot of Tom Reese?
Yes. Or we got like the culmination of that
the
story.
Poe and Stowe and the culmination of everything his father taught him.
Time.
I think ever since
time
and ever the Watch. I mean, the Watch has been such a through line. I think we need to do a little mini episode on this podcast, maybe a 15-minute just reaction to the Tom Reese news.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get out of here, I need to thank our patrons, our Deputy Director, Sherry F., our Special Operator, Jason C., our Special Agents, Ben, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Don, Peggy, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review to your favorite podcast, No Limits, on Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at thrillerpodcast. And as always, just don't go flying. Don't get on a plane. What TJ Newman has taught us, it's not safe to fly.
You know what? Let Joss, Danny, Steve, Matt, and TJ just be Josh, Steve, Matt, TJ, whoever. Let them be themselves because they're awesome.